Let's discuss the presidency. Hope I'm not breaking news. This guy is our president, one Donald John Trump. Served as 45th president of the United States as well. Former real estate developer, mainly out in New York, East Coast, Jersey. Former reality television star, The Apprentice. It's the show where he was famous for saying, "You're fired." Assumed office on January 20th. I should say assumed office this time. It's the second administration. January 20th, 2025 at 12:01 p.m. And he ran with J.D. Vance, who served round about 2 years into a single term as senator from Ohio, author of, what was the book called? Hillbilly Elegy. So the president is vested with all executive power. He has a 4-year term, renewable once. President Trump has renewed it, so he cannot run again. The president can serve 8 years. This is always a point of confusion to a minority, anyway, of students. A presidential term is 4 years. We elect presidents most of the time consecutively. So like Bush Jr. served 8 years. Obama served 8 years, but they ran for re-election after 4. So President Trump and President Cleveland are the only 2 presidents who have served 2 non-consecutive terms. And people like to make a big deal out of this. I'm not entirely sure why, but I threw that bit of trivia in because when I do this in person, people have asked me who was the other guy. President Cleveland, Grover Cleveland. President Harrison and served as the 23rd president in between Cleveland's 2 terms. So Cleveland had Harrison, Trump had Biden. So electors to the Electoral College, members of the Electoral College, who directly elect the president, our popular vote indirectly elects the president, the popular vote. So Biden won Illinois. That conveyed to our now 19 electors, okay, we need to cast our vote for President Biden. So they go down to Springfield. It's a whole big thing we don't need to worry about right now. And they say, I cast my vote for Biden, I cast my vote for Biden, and the other 17 would do the same. So electors cannot be a U.S. senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States. And these guys aren't big, mysterious people. I've been an elector in the past. Another bit of myth-busting. The president and vice president can, in fact, come from the same state, but the problem, what you run into is electoral math, because electors can't cast votes for candidates from the same state twice, which comes into play during close elections. So the oath of office, and this is just what the Constitution says: before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And if you don't say that, you're not in. You can't become president. And in case you're interested, there's a link to a video where you can watch President Trump being sworn in for the second time. The president is compensated for his services. The president shall, at stated times, receive for his services a compensation which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected, and he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from the United States or any of them. Emolument meaning gift of money or other valuable thing. So he gets $400,000 a year paid monthly according to 3 U.S. Code 102. He also gets the following perks, which are pretty nice. $50,000 an annual expense account, which is meant to defray just expenses that he might accrue whilst in office. I mean, they do have to buy, their own clothes, their own, everything isn't on the taxpayer. $100,000 travel account, and I've always assumed that is for when they get to wherever they're going, whether the president be traveling by himself or with his family, because it costs more than $100,000 to fire up Air Force One. The next number, I've taken an average of, I think I went back to Carter, of administrations from the Carter administration, because there doesn't seem to be a set number for this. About $19,000 annually for entertainment. Maybe they want to see a new movie and they bring it to the White House Theater. At the end of their terms, presidents are still on the government payroll, which is pretty nice, which includes an annual pension of about $200,000, and that goes back to Harry Truman after he had finished serving our country. He went back to Independence, Missouri, and a congressional delegation came out to see him, and he was just living in a dump. And they thought, well, this isn't how a former chief executive should live, so they went back and they passed an act to make sure that former presidents had a pension and they had something to live on. Now, do they probably need that today? I mean, with the books and the lecture circuit tours and everything, no. But it's still there. Healthcare, and we're not talking about healthcare that you and I get. I mean, this is like the heavy-duty A++ category healthcare. Paid official travel. They're treated like elder statesmen. They also get an office, which is oftentimes attached to or in the vicinity of their library. So let's talk a little bit about the succession. So in case of the removal of the president from office or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, the same shall devolve on the vice president, and the Congress may by law provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability both of the president and vice president, declaring what officer shall then act as president, and such officer shall act accordingly until the disability be removed or a president shall be elected. And we haven't had to get that far, fortunately. So the succession, the vice president, that's usually how far it gets. The Speaker of the House and the President pro tempore of the Senate. Now, both these gentlemen, as they currently are, have to resign from Congress before taking over the presidency if they're called upon to do so, because it's illegal to work for two branches of the federal government at the same time. It's a conflict of interest. Then after that, we get to the cabinet officers, starting with the Secretary of State, because that was the first department that was created, and we go all the way down to the Secretary of Homeland Security. Now, that's always struck me as odd as well, because we're still back here. The Secretary of Homeland Security is lower on the list than the Secretary of Agriculture or the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and I'd rather have law enforcement of some sort, like the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State to a diplomat, but, what do I know? So, the Vice President has succeeded the President 9 times in U.S. history, beginning with John Tyler replacing William Harrison in 1841, unless I'm very much mistaken. Here's a bit of presidential trivia for you. John Tyler still has one living grandson alive right now. I think it was two, but one of them passed just recently. At first, the vice president technically assumed only the powers and duties of the presidency, and I hope you understand the distinction. Still the vice president, but doing the work of his boss. So the vice president succeeds if the president leaves office due to death, resignation, or removal. Now, under the 25th Amendment, when that was passed, the vice president becomes acting president. So you drop the vice from it. It's just Mr. Madam President. Becomes acting president if the vice president and president's cabinet determine that the president is disabled. Now, what is a disability? Well, that would be up to the vice president, the majority of the president's cabinet. The custom here was that the vice president took the presidential office as well. So under the 25th Amendment, which was adopted in 1967, we now have the vice president formally assuming the office of president, again dropping the vice as it was before the 25th Amendment was passed, and they were just taking on the duties of their boss. Now it is Mr. and maybe one day Madam President. So the Presidential Succession Act of 1947 set the order of succession after the vice president. And here's another little bit of Harry Truman trivia. The Speaker of the House and the President pro tempore of the Senate used to be flipped in the line of succession. Truman put the Speaker after the Vice President because he liked having drinks with Sam Rayburn, who was the Speaker of the House when Truman was President. The presiding officers of Congress are followed by the heads of the cabinet departments, as we just discussed, in the order that they were created. So state through Homeland Security. Presidential succession is the scheme by which presidential vacancy is filled. Our Constitution didn't provide succession of the vice president. The offices and duties transferred to the vice president, not the office itself. I'm doing a little bit of repetition here. What do you think that might mean for a test? The precedent was set by John Tyler in 1841. And the 25th Amendment in 1967, the vice president shall become president in case of death or resignation. And we had for many years no provision at all for deciding if a president was too disabled to continue in office. Woodrow Wilson, for example, the only president we've ever had who's had a PhD, a doctorate, he suffered a stroke in 1919 and was too ill to meet with his cabinet for 7 months. His wife, Edith, basically took over the running of the country during that time. Eisenhower had 3 serious but very temporary illnesses while in office. 1981, President Reagan was badly wounded in an assassination attempt by John Hinckley Jr., trying to impress Jodie Foster. So the amendment here addresses the disability issue. The vice president becomes acting president if the president informs Congress in writing that he or she cannot carry out the powers and duties of the office, or the vice president and a majority of the members of the cabinet inform Congress in writing that the president is incapacitated. Those 2 points here, that's the only way to determine presidential disability. So the president can resume power, can take back control of the executive branch by informing Congress that no disability exists any longer. That's all. You send a second letter to Congress, you take your office back. The vice president and a majority of the cabinet can challenge that decision, and if they do so, Congress has 21 days to decide the issue. And we've only used the disability provision twice. Ronald Reagan, the 8 hours he was in surgery, if memory is serving me correctly, after the Hinckley's attempted assassination. George W. Bush, I think, just for some very routine medical procedures when he was under general anesthesia. So I'd take a look at this, certainly. Take a look at this as well. So Article 2, Section 1, the designated survivor. We will pick up with this in Part 2.